Magandang araw. Ako si Kui Code. Welcome back to my channel where I teach Python through fun and practical examples. Today we'll be diving into more software design patterns. So the code that I have up here is a previous video that I did called the factory method. So just for a review, a factory method is a creational design pattern that provides an interface for creating objects in a superclass, but it allows the subclasses to alter the type of object that will be created. So in this original example, we have different enemies right here. We have a goblin, an orc, and a dragon. And then we have, this is the superclass of the enemy, and these are the subclasses of the enemies. And then we just have our factory, our abstract factory. It's a bit confusing because this video is about an abstract factory method, but this is just a regular factory method that just happens to be abstract. But then we have our concrete implementations of the factories. We have one for each type. And then this one can be added afterwards to kind of show that we're able to add new types without changing the old code by just creating a new enemy, creating a new factory, and then we're good to go. So we have a list of factories here, and then we basically just choose a random factory, and then it prints the enemy, and then that's basically it. So I'm not really go into too much detail in this code because this is already from a previous video, but as you can see the output, it kind of just spawns random enemies and then gives us the output here. But when it comes to the abstract factory pattern, it's a creational design pattern that lets us produce families of related objects. So rather than just having a bunch of enemies and having a factory for each, we have different types. So in this video, we're going to have melee enemies, which are, close range, and then we're going to have range enemies. So those are two different types. So we're going to have a factory system for the melee ones, and then have a different factory system for the range one. And then the abstract factory is kind of like a factory of factories where you can kind of swap in and out whether you want to do any of the melee ones or any of the range ones. So I'm just going to add a couple things, add one thing here to the top. Get our default dictionary here. This stuff can be the same. We'll have a goblin and we'll have an orc. I'm going to get rid of some of this. We don't really need this many classes. That's fine. We're going to add two new ones because we have two for the melee, and now we're going to also add two for the range. So what we have for the range, we have a goblin archer and we have a fire mage here. So those are our two range ones. And now we're going to make an extra class called this is just going to basically be a dictionary that just has all the enemies registered. That way we can access them in the other classes a bit easier. So enemies is a default dictionary, and the type of the value of the default dictionary is just another dictionary. And then we'll have two class methods here. Register enemy. And then we'll also have another one called create enemy. So we'll pass in class instead of self. This is because this is a static class. We don't really need to make an object because it's on the class level, not the object level. So we'll have a category, name, enemy class, and then this specific class has a property called enemies, and it's a dictionary. The category is going to be, this is the key, which is going to be the category, whether it's melee or range. And then the value of that is going to be another dictionary, and the key for that is just the name of the enemy that you want. So after I'm done this, we'll actually populate this list so you can kind of have a better idea of how that works. And then for this one, I also need class method here. Turn class enemies category name, and then the value is just an actual object, so we can just do that because it's going to give us a new object. So as an example for populating this, of course this is a static, which means we don't need to make an object, so we can just call the class name by itself. There's the class name, register enemy, and then the type, or sorry, the category is melee, and then the name of the melee monster, which we'll do goblin here. And then the third parameter is just the object itself, which is just the name of the class. So we'll do this. These two will be melee, these two will be ranged. Goblin, orc, goblin archer, fire mage. So now that we have all these registered, we can go to the next step, which is making our abstract factory. So instead of doing enemy factory, we can just change the names here. Monster factory. This is still going to be create enemy. This is not going to be abstract anymore, actually. And then this will just return random dot choice self dot enemy types. And this actually, yeah, that does come from ABC. Okay, and then we're going to, instead of making a factory for each monster, we're going to make a factory for each type of monster. So we'll do one for melee, and then we'll do one for range. So I'm just going to copy these over here for the sake of speed. So this comes from the monster factory we just made. We have our create enemy method here. So it takes the dictionary, which is up here, and we're basically accessing the key for melee, which is going to return all of the melee monsters. And the key is just we're going to have a list of keys, which is just goblin and orc, because these are the keys inside of the melee dictionary here. And it's going to pick a random choice between goblin and orc for the type. And then we can just simply create that enemy. And then it's just going to return. And then the same thing when it comes to the ranged one is that it's going to pick a random ranged enemy and basically do the same thing. For these ones, I don't need right now. So I'll just delete that. And instead, I'll do the main one here, which is class called monster spawner. Factory. This is where we're going to pass in the factory that we want. So we're going to pass in the melee monster factory, or we're going to pass in the range monster factory. Self.factory equals factory. And then spawn enemy equals self dot factory dot create enemy, because of course factory is the type we're passing in, which is one of these two, and then each one has a create enemy. So regardless of which one we pass in, it's still going to be able to call this method here. And then we can just put some text. And now we're going to change the main method. Let me just delete this for now. So I'm going to do that. So print spawning melee monsters first, and then make a spawner object, which is a monster spawner. And what do we need to pass in for monster spawner? We need to pass in an actual factory, which is a monster factory, which could either be this one or this one. We'll start with the melee one first. So we'll just put in a new melee monster factory there. And then we could actually just call, let's just test it, spawner.spawn, which is going to call this, which is going to create a random one, and then it's going to show it in there. There's always typos that I have. That's just the nature of coding. Let's see here, line 70. I think I missed a type somewhere. Let me check that. Enemy type. Did I spell that wrong? Let me actually just read again what the error says. Oh, it takes 0. Animator.create enemy takes 0 positional arguments, but 3 were given. Which one is enemy registry? I think it's that. Because of this, right? CLS category name. When we call this method, we need to pass in 3 things because we're passing in, you know, self and these 2. Let's see what happens. So now it spawning melee monsters and an orc has appeared. So that actually works in terms of a melee one. And then what we can do is just spawner dot, rather than just like making another object, spawner dot factory equals ranged monster factory. So we're basically just taking this object and changing it from the melee monster factory to the range monster factory. So then when we call spawner, this is just going to spawn a range monster instead. Which now it does, it spawned a fire mage, which is a range monster. And then the cool thing is, let's say if I wanted to add another type, so I'll just do this. So enemy registry dot register enemy. I can do, let's add a ranged, another ranged enemy. We'll call it troll stone thrower, and then pass in the object, which is, or the class name, which is that, and then I will just spawn a bunch of them just to make sure we actually get one of those. But this obviously is not created yet, so I will go ahead and create that now, which this can just be done like that. So now we have the stone thrower, and let's go ahead and now run it. I had a typo in enemy registry. I'll just copy it because it's easier that way. So now we have a bunch of those, and now we have a bunch of stone throwers, or troll stone throwers that appeared. And, you know, that works. And then again, the best part about having it done this way is that in order to add a new monster, we registered it into the list, and then we just literally added the new class, and that's it. We didn't have to change any of these other classes, you know, which is always a better way to do things. So that's it for this video. So if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And of course, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. See you next time on Kuya Code. Paalam.